Title: The Waterline. The cold water struck her like a slap, without warning and without mercy. It hit the crown of her head, soaked through the worn fabric of her faded baseball cap, streamed over her face, down her neck, and flooded the gray cotton of her t-shirt. The icy shock stole her breath for a split second. Water splattered on the dull beige tiles of the Sterling West Precinct lobby floor, leaving dark trails where it mixed with layers of grime no janitor ever quite managed to scrub away. The air inside the station was a noxious cocktail, burnt coffee left too long on a hot plate, damp ink from old forms, the faint, stale effort of disinfectant that never seemed to win its war against time. The girl stood frozen in the middle of the floor, her limbs stiff with shock. Not a scream, not a curse, just silence, and the dripping of water that fell from her shoulders to form a growing puddle around her sneakers. Her mouth opened slightly, catching a breath not meant for speech but for steadying herself against the humiliation that had landed without invitation. "I told you to go away." The voice thundered across the lobby like a gavel against cold marble. Every other sound in the space shrank under its weight. Behind the tall, oak service desk stood Officer Brian Krell. 40-something, ruddy complexion, and a permanent scowl carved into his face like it had been chiseled there. His hands, still gripping the now empty bottle of Deer Ridge spring water, trembled not from regret but from self-satisfaction. His lips curled with disdain. "This isn't a shelter. This is the Sterling Police Department. You don't come in here stirring trouble. Now get out before I really lose my patience." His tone was sharp, unapologetic, and loud enough to bounce off the cinder-block walls and settle into every pair of ears within range. Several people seated along the wall stiffened. An elderly woman lowered her phone, which had been mid-scroll, her eyes now fixed on the drenched woman. A young officer standing at the printer in the corner turned slowly, paper still in hand, eyes wide, caught in that purgatory between protocol and paralysis. The girl didn't speak immediately. She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. Instead, she slowly raised her chin, droplets still cascading from the brim of her cap. Her face, partially obscured by strands of wet hair, came into focus. Her eyes, which moments before had seemed meek and downcast, were now unwavering, cold, measured. Her gaze cut through the arrogance standing behind the counter like it was made of glass. "My kind," she repeated evenly, her voice surprisingly calm, rich, and precise. "Officer, what exactly do you mean by that?" The room held its breath. Even the humming of the old vending machine seemed to hush itself. Krell froze just long enough for the tension to swell. There it was, the question. One that clawed at the edge of legality and decency, dragging into the light what had simmered just beneath the surface of his expression. To answer it would be to admit too much. To ignore it would be to confirm everything. But before he could say anything further, her hands moved. Slowly, with purpose. She raised them to the brim of her hat, pinched it with her fingers, and peeled it away. Her soaked hair, once hidden beneath the cheap cap, spilled down, clinging to her face and neck. Then she stood straighter, taller. "I think," she said, locking eyes with him, "it's time I properly introduced myself." In that moment, the woman who had walked in minutes earlier as Maya Jennings, the tired civilian in jeans and sneakers, vanished. And in her place stood Chief Danielle Holt. Less than a week ago, Holt had been sworn in as the new chief of the Sterling Police Department. A 41-year-old black woman with 2 decades of experience and a reputation for transformation, Holt had spent her career repairing broken departments. Her arrival in Sterling had come with fanfare, yes, but also resistance. The city was a pressure cooker of racial tensions, economic gaps, and a police force slowly drowning in misconduct claims. Holt had been hired as the rescue rope, but she knew better. A rope alone doesn't save you. You have to climb it. And climb she did, disguised as the very people her department was sworn to protect. Before this day, she had conducted 2 unannounced site visits. But the West Precinct was different. Nestled between low-income housing and middle-class suburbs, it was where most complaints originated. Holt had combed through files. There were whispers, patterns, and in nearly every cluster of concern, one name echoed louder than others: Officer Brian Krell, badge number 327. Long before the water incident, Holt had decided to meet Krell. Not as a superior, not as a polished chief in a bulletproof vest, but as Maya, a civilian, a citizen with a problem, someone invisible. And now, her soaked shirt clung to her chest. The badge was no longer hidden beneath the disguise of denim and exhaustion. It was in her bearing, in her voice, and in the stunned silence that followed. "Officer Krell," she said, voice ironclad, You just poured water over the head of a citizen seeking assistance. The words were deliberate. You refused service. You mocked, dismissed, insulted, and assaulted. This isn't just unprofessional. It's criminal. Krell's mouth moved, but no sound emerged. The color drained from his face, chased away by the ice-cold reality soaking through his uniformed pride. His eyes darted across the room, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. I didn't know it was you, he stammered. Chief, I didn't. That's the point, she cut him off. You didn't know. And look how you treated me. The silence was suffocating now. Even the printer had stopped humming. A voice came from the far end of the lobby. Sergeant Blake, Holt called firmly. From behind a half-closed door, a stocky man in his 50s stepped out. The recognition was immediate. His eyes darted from Holt's soaked figure to Krell's trembling form. Take Officer Krell into custody, she ordered. Badge, weapon, and radio. Effective immediately, he is suspended. And I want every second of this incident recorded, documented, and filed with Internal Affairs by end of day. Yes, Chief, Blake responded, his voice tight but obedient. And Blake, she added, get me statements. Civilians, staff, and send me the footage from the lobby cameras. I want to personally review it. Krell crumpled. It wasn't physical, but psychological. He slumped, hand shaking, bottle falling from his grip. Please. I didn't mean to. But Holt was unmoved. This was never just about me, she said. It's about every person who walks through that door hoping for help and gets hostility instead. The video evidence was clear. It showed every moment, from the casual disregard to the final humiliation. It spread through the department like wildfire. And though Holt never named Krell publicly, the message was unmissable. Her solution, however, shocked even her closest advisors. She didn't fire him. Instead, she offered him the Reckoning Protocol, a one-time reform program created for the worst internal offenders. It was grueling. 2 years of mandatory training in ethics, de-escalation, implicit bias, anger management, and community service in marginalized neighborhoods. Regular psychiatric evaluations. And, most importantly, a stipulation. If Krell failed even one aspect of the program, he would be dismissed permanently. Some called it mercy. Others called it visionary justice. But for Danielle Holt, it was a necessary middle path. Retribution didn't rebuild trust. Change did. Krell, for his part, entered the program like a man entering the desert. Parched, humbled, terrified. His first community service shift was spent cleaning graffiti in a neighborhood he used to mock behind closed doors. He never expected someone from that neighborhood to hand him a bottle of cold water and say, hot day, huh? That moment, like the water he once weaponized, hit him harder than he could admit. Chief Holt, meanwhile, pressed forward. She began reforming internal policy, auditing complaint files, and revising training protocols. More surprise inspections followed. Officers with integrity welcomed it. Others bristled. But none could ignore her. The woman who walked into that lobby drenched and dismissed had left behind a wake of accountability. She didn't just expose one officer. She showed an entire city what leadership looked like. And she did it all without raising her voice.